Yes. Hey, welcome in everyone. I'm just doing some sharing. Then we are going to get into our Halloween special today. All right. Thank you for the heart me. Hey, Sasha. We are going back in time to Victorian England, where today we're going to be discussing Jack the Ripper, but we are starting at noon. Girl, look at this, girl. What are you doing for Halloween, Sasha? And I totally want to open up boxes. So if people want to interact, you don't have to turn your camera on. I know some people might be at work. But we decided to do it at noon today. That way everybody can go trick-or-treating with their family. Hey, Miss Joe, how are you doing today? We are going to be talking about Jack the Ripper for a Halloween special. Yeah, I'm going to take Mikey trick-or-treating. That's why I wanted to do it at this time. But if you can't make it or you want to watch the entire thing, like if you have to jump in and out, I am going to post it to my YouTube. You know, it'll probably take me like 5 years, but it'll go up there at some point. Okay, I'm going to keep inviting some people, so just give me a minute, everyone. Give me a minute. Whew. We got a lot of people up in here. Or I hope we will. Okay. All right. Well, I just want to say before I start drinking Diet Coke that today our sponsor, thank you, Alicia, for the heart me. I've missed you. I'm hoping that I can go live a little bit more now. My husband is moderating today, so if you guys have any questions or want to jump in boxes, just let me know and he'll help me do that. Thank you for the baby ghost. So today we are sponsored by Liquid Unaliving. This one is the Squeeze to Death. I absolutely love it. And what a fun Halloween. I just love their packaging. I know, I've missed you. I'm trying to get Danelle to come back on live. You know how summer going into fall, it's a lot. All right, let's see. What time is it? I'm going to give people 4 more minutes to come in since we're starting at noon. And I'm hoping that some of my UK friends are going to be able to jump in. I do have a friend he says he's not a ripperologist, but he has a lot of information on this case. So like I said, if we want to open up boxes, we're going to go into Victorian England and what it was like living there, especially as a woman, because we know that I'm going to call him Saucy Jack. That way we stay in guidelines. We're going to talk about why and how these victims were targeted, especially due to the circumstances that they were living in. Living in Victorian England, as you can see, this is Whitechapel. So this is the main area where most of the unalivings took place. And so we're going to get into some of the Victorian England, and then we'll get into the canonical 5, which are the 5 victims that we know are tied back to Saucy Jack. And then we're going to get into possible other victims, theories, and then some of the letters and some of the possible suspects. Thank you for sharing the live, Sasha. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, 3 minutes. What are you doing tonight, Miss Joe? Are you going to hand out candy too? Are you going to take your little one, your grandbaby, are you going to take him trick-or-treating? Mikey is Spider-Man, and his costume is so cute. I'll send it to you, Sasha. I sent it to Miss Jo earlier. He's so cute. Okay. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Everyone, if you are in here right now, in 2 minutes, we are going to start our Halloween special where we are going to travel back into Victorian England. I know. I feel like if Allie was here, she'd be sitting here doing this. You know she'd be a content creator. You're scared. Well, I hope everyone has a happy Halloween and stay safe out there. Hannah, welcome in. Oh my gosh. Okay, so today we're going back to Victorian England, where we are going to talk about Saucy Jack, or as he's known, Jack the Ripper. Hey, Misha. Mishmash, how are you doing? Thank you for always supporting and liking my content. I truly appreciate that. Yes, thank you. And I was telling people, if you can't stay for the whole thing, you guys know I'll put it on my YouTube and then I'll share shorts to our TikTok. Welcome in, Jeff, Devin. Welcome in, everyone. Okay, we've got 1 minute and then we are going to start. So we are going to start with what living in Victorian England was like at that time, because I think some people have romanticized it. Even if you've watched the movie From Hell, starring Johnny Depp, some of it is somewhat romanticized, but I will tell you, living at this time would have not been for me. I couldn't have done this. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, we've got 1 minute. I'm waiting till the clock strikes noon here in Texas anyway. How's everybody doing? Happy Halloween. I'm not going to do battles right now. No, sir. I should have turned that off. Groovy Kev. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. Mishmash, Hannah, Miss Jo, Sasha, all my favorites. And, of course, Sully Beats, who is going to be... Hey, Groovy Kev. How are you today? All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in. We are at the noon hour. So, Victorian London in the 19th century was a fascinating mix of grandeur, innovation, and dark realities. Yes, today we are getting into Jack the Ripper. I'm going to be calling him Saucy Jack from here on out. We know we have to follow some guidelines. So, this is what Victorian England would have looked like back in the late 19th century. So like I said, the city was undergoing rapid industrial growth, which brought both prosperity and intense challenges, especially for women at this time. Towering smokestacks, as you can see in the background, and bustling factories dominated the skyline, symbolizing progress, but also blanketing the city in soot and pollution. The streets were alive with new forms of transportation, from horse-drawn carriages to the newly developed underground railway, adding to the constant clamor and activity. When they say that the city never sleeps, this is definitely true for late 19th century Victorian England. And as you can see, this is the area of Whitechapel that we are talking about, where Saucy Jack reigned terror over the streets of Whitechapel. Okay. In the wealthier parts of town, impressive buildings like the Royal Albert Hall and the Natural History Museum reflected the architectural trends of the time, combining Gothic, Baroque, and classical styles with a particular love for intricate detail. The affluent enjoyed a lifestyle of elegance, frequenting theaters, art galleries, and lavish balls while showing off the latest fashions. However, only a short distance away within blocks, the East End revealed a much darker side to Victorian England. Why is it saying to swipe right? Okay, it doesn't matter. Here, overcrowded tenements, which meant that there were like people living literally on top of each other. A lot of these dwellings didn't even have windows. And so you were breathing in. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in, Willy Wonka, Carmen, everyone. Welcome. We are talking about Jack the Ripper. So in the East End, people didn't even have windows. And as we talked about, the pollution and the overcrowding made it a very stifling environment. Overcrowded tenements house working class families in cramped, unsanitary conditions. Poverty and crime were rampant, giving rise to infamous figures like Saucy Jack or Jack the Ripper, who terrorized the city streets. The social divide was stark, with the opulence of the upper class contrasting sharply with the dire struggles of the impoverished. Woo, Alicia! That is welcome in, Savannah. We are doing Jack the Ripper. That's my tarantula and my costume from last year. Thank you for the pumpkin, everyone. Okay, so gaslit streets, fog rolling over the Thames, which is the river that goes through central London, and a constant air of mystery made Victorian London feel both romantic and forbidding. But today we're going to get into the foreboding side of things. This was also a period of intellectual growth with movements in science, literature, and social reform. Writers like Charles Dickens, which I'm sure all of you guys had to read in high school if you were like me. Thank you for the baby ghost. Welcome in, Katie. Welcome in, everyone. Writers like Charles Dickens and Oscar Wilde captured the complex life of the city, while debates on morality, gender roles, and the impact of science marked the era's intellectual landscape. Victorian London was the city of contrast, with wealth, poverty, progress, and decay. Beauty and darkness coexisted on every corner. All right, so let's go ahead and get into Jack himself. And first, we're going to go over the canonical five. They are termed the canonical five because we know for sure that these women were victims of Jack the Ripper. However, there have always been suspected other victims to this crime, and so we will get into that in a bit. But let's start with the canonical five. Were all women unalived in 1888. And if you guys watch my content, not only did we just do a video about syphilis, which made the East End of London an even scarier place to live, but London's Whitechapel district, like I said, with the fog and everything, it made for a very dark setting, and there was not a lot of lights around the town at the time. So not only did we just get into syphilis, but if you watch my videos where I talk about true crime, we always know that these type of people can be put into categories. And I will tell you that, first of all, Jack would have been a spree unaliver. All of the canonical five happened in 1888. Not only that, but I will get into how I believe that he was actually very disorganized. A lot of people, I think, give Jack more credence, but in my opinion, I don't think he was very organized. He might have known anatomy, and we'll get into that. But like I said, he would have been a spree, disorganized unaliver, in my opinion. Crystal, welcome in. Slayer, everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we are doing Jack the Ripper. So we are about to get into the canonical five. The first victim was Mary Ann or Polly Nichols. Thank you for the heart me. She was unalived on August 31st, 1888. Polly was the first confirmed victim of Saucy Jack. Her body was found in Bucks Row, which is now Durard Street, with her throat and abdomen. They took out Jack took out anatomical features, especially in the women. So she had, how do you say it? Mutilations, And this marked the beginning of the Ripper spree. So, of course, originally, thank you, Crystal, and happy Halloween. The dentist is like one of my most feared places. So that seems very fitting for Halloween. So at this time, crime, like we said, was prevalent, especially in the Victorian era. So when Mary Ann or Polly Nichols was unalived, police originally thought that this was a one-off. However, Annie Chapman, who was only about 9 days later, was unalived on September 8th of 1888. Her body was found in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. Just like Polly Nichols, Annie had her throat and was severely mutilated with particular organs removed in a very gruesome manner. Thank you, Steve. Welcome in, welcome in. I thought I had you set as a moderator. That way you can pin. Let me do that real fast. Add moderator, confirm. Okay, there you go. If you type something out, it'll put a little bubble by your name. Welcome in, Storm. Mia, everyone, welcome in. Okay, so we've just covered the first 2 victims. Happy Halloween! So our third victim would be Elizabeth Stride. Again, only several weeks later, her unaliving happened on September 30th, 1888. Elizabeth's body was discovered in Deptfield's yard on Burner Street, which is now Henrique. Of course, I'm going to say this wrong, but it's Henrique Street, while her throat again had been She lacked the mutilations seen in other victims, and this actually suggested to the police at the time. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in, Slayer. Welcome in, Sasha. Welcome in, everyone. So the police believed, because he was not able to finish the crime, that he might have been interrupted, which is important to note. So then the night of Catherine Eddowes. So because they believe that Elizabeth Stride, he was not able to do the abdominal mutilations like he had done in the previous victims, and they believe that he might have been interrupted or somebody had walked by. The same night, which is called the double event, Catherine Eddowes was unalived again on September 30th, 1888. She was unalived on the same night as Elizabeth Stride. Again, her body was found in Mitre Square, and her injuries were among the most brutal, including not only mutilations to this area and organ removal, which he particularly liked to take out the female sex organs. I believe also a few kidneys. And not only that, but she had several cuts and mutilations on the face, which to me shows that because possibly he was interrupted with the unaliving of Elizabeth Stride, that he went into what we call over unaliving. Welcome in, Layla. How's everybody doing today? Happy Halloween. We are talking about Jacques the Ripper. So our last, and I feel like one of the most infamous, was the Mary Jane Kelly unaliving. This happened only 10 days after Catherine Eddowes. She was unalived on November 9th, 1888. Mary Jane was the Ripper's last and most brutal of the victims. If you have seen pictures of this, you can go find them on the internet, especially Reddit. And looking at that crime scene photo is one of the worst crime scene photos that I have ever seen. So Mary Jane Kelly wasn't quite on the outs like our first 4 victims, who seemed to be ladies of the night for several different reasons. Either they couldn't afford rent. As we stated, living in Victorian England was very hard. Women would even pay a couple of pennies just to sleep in a safe space, meaning that they slept in coffins. Even sometimes there would be a rope around a pole where you would sleep standing up if you couldn't afford a coffin or a pew for the night. So these women were very vulnerable. However, Mary Jane had her own tenement, a very small tenement that a few women lived in and out of. However, her window had been broken and she was not able to get it fixed. And so the way she unlocked and locked and came in and out of the house was she would reach through, unlock the door. And possibly Jack saw her doing this and knew how to get into her tenement. But there he was able to mutilate in a extreme way because he had more privacy. You know, he knew that a copper wasn't going to be walking down the streets, or he might not be interrupted as he was in the Elizabeth Stride unaliving. So Mary Jane Kelly, her body was found in the room at Miller's Court in Spitalfields. And like I said, her body was beyond recognition. Welcome in, Sinister. Welcome in, Deb. Happy Halloween to everybody. We today are getting into Jack the Ripper. So these unalivings filled with mystery and terror took place in a setting of, thank you for the heart me, setting of poverty and social unrest, and they captivated the public and press. Today, the case remains unsolved, with numerous theories about who Jack's real identity was, ranging from medical professionals to members of the royal family. So here in a little bit, we will get into some theories and suspects as to who Jack really was. But we just went over the 5 canonical victims, again, which were Mary Ann or Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, and Catherine Eddowes were unalived in the same night, marking it the double event. And lastly, Mary Jane Kelly, whose unaliving seemed to be very much over the top, very rage-filled. So, what are some of our other... Hold on, give me 1 second. Rage-filled. So, what are some of our other... Hold on, give me 1 second. Rage-filled. So, what are some of our other... Hold on, give me 1 second. Sorry, I apologize. Thank you, Sully Beats. Welcome in, JJ. Johnny, welcome in, everybody. Okay, today we are covering Jack the Ripper. We just went through the canonical 5, meaning that they were known to be victims of the Ripper. Again, as I stated earlier in the video, if you go watch a lot of my true crime stuff, we kind of categorize Smurial unalivers into different sections. So, in my belief, because the canonical 5 happened within just a few months, he obviously would be considered a spree unaliver. Jason, welcome in, Jason. How are you doing today? And happy Halloween. So, I forgot where I was. So, as we stated, he would be considered a spree unaliver, meaning that normal Smurial, if you're labeled a Smurial unaliver, you kind of have these cooling off periods. It's kind of like a roller coaster. However, spree unalivers unalive in a very quick fashion. Thank you for the baby ghosts. So I would consider Jack to be a spree unaliver and also very disorganized, although I do believe that he had anatomical knowledge, but I do believe that he had some type of mental illness which made him a very disorganized unaliver. Welcome in, Lori. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for being here. So yes, there are several other victims who have sometimes been associated with Jack, although their connections are more debated and less widely accepted than the canonical 5. These possible victims, sometimes referred to as the non-canonical victims, were unalived in similar areas of London before, during, or after the canonical unalivings. But there are discrepancies in their cases that make it uncertain as to whether they were victims of the same unaliver. Some of the more commonly discussed non-canonical victims include, before we go into them, let me take a sip. And knowledge of area. Yes, exactly. You are right. So not only did the Ripper seem to possibly know or follow possibly some of these women from the bar, and would try to engage with them to interact with ladies of the night. He knew the area well. Not only that, but to me, I believe sometimes he followed his victims. Why was he called Jack? That is a very good question, and we are going to get into it. The reason he was termed Jack was because a series of letters was sent into the police department, and here in a little bit we will get into the letters because some of them were even sent with human organs. However, none of the letters have ever been truly identified to come from Jack, but there are some that seem more likely than others. So after we get into the non-canonical victims, we will get into suspects and then the letters, and that is where the name, one of the letters, if you guys want to jump in boxes and have an interaction, you guys are welcome to come up. If you guys want to do that, we can definitely do this. I want this to be interactive. I want you guys to ask questions. I love doing this. You guys know that. So, just like the Zodiac, who signed his letters with, the Zodiac in his name, and that's how he was coined. That's exactly how Jack the Ripper was coined. Yes, you can definitely jump in off cam. Let me add you as a guest. Yeah, so you turn your mic on and you keep your camera off. Does anybody else want to jump in? Just send a request. Let me know if you get that. I'm down. Okay, Sasha, let's go, guys. I love this. All right, sometimes it takes a while to populate. Here they come. Okay, so Steve from the UK has quite a bit of knowledge about Jack, and Sasha, Alicia, as you guys know, is one of my biggest fans of table research, and she has a lot of knowledge, especially about like the Zodiac and the Santa Rosa, and so you're very knowledgeable at the psychopathies and stuff that we've covered, right, Sasha?
Yes.
Am I in?
You are. I can hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yes, we got you. Ooh.
Aim on.
All right, you guys want me to keep going with some of the non-canonical victims?
One of the things I was going to say, someone said about why is he called Jack? And obviously you've got like the letters, but I think Jack was also a very British slang name. So like there was a lot of things named after Jack. So and then is it the Royal Navy? You had like Jack Tar. Jack was like a term for a sailor. You also had Spring Heel Jack, which was also another mythical thing in the early 1800s. So yeah, like Jack was quite a common thing. And then when it was branded Jack the Ripper, it just kind of stuck, and it was So I think that was
It's kind of like here in the States how we use like John Doe.
That's it.
I think.
Yeah.
All right. So the first non-canonical victim we're going to get into, her name was Emma Elizabeth Smith. Okay. She was unalived the same year, but back in April. She was attacked and robbed in Whitechapel. Thank you for the ghost. Thank you, Jason. Okay. Although her injuries were severe, they did not match her because she didn't match the Ripper signature style. However, she survived the attack long enough to seek medical help, but then later passed away from her injuries. Some believe that her unaliving may have been gang-related rather than the work of Jack. And I think before you jumped in here, Steve, I was saying that crime was very prevalent. You can see Whitechapel behind me. Crime was very prevalent in this area. There was not good lighting. There was smog, pollution. These women were literally living day to day.
Yeah, lots of like tight alleyways, nooks and crannies, all that kind of thing.
And like we were saying, of course, when people live in impoverished areas, there are going to be like gang activity. And some of these
Yeah.
ladies that were victims of Jack actually had to pay out gang members that said they provided protection. However, did they provide protection?
Yeah,
Because as we see, there's a lot of women that.
yeah, like in From Hell with the Nichols boys, I think they were called. Nasty
Yeah,
pieces of work.
exactly. So our second is Martha Tabram. Okay, so she's in August 7th, which would have been the day before Jack's first. Canonical. Martha's unaliving is sometimes seen as a potential prelude to the Ripper's spree. Like I said, he is a spree unaliver. She was found with almost 40 wounds on George Yard near Whitechapel. The violence was so extreme, but the absence of the trademark throat and no mutilations in this area, although we see that Jack did not always do that, suggests it may have not been the same unaliver. Some experts, however, think her unaliving shows signs of escalating violence, similar to Jack the Ripper's early work. Like I said, if you follow my page, we talk about this a lot. There is escalation, especially in a spree unaliver. They are going to escalate more quickly than a smerial person would. All right, our third is Rose Millet. She was found not with her slit, but rather manually in December 1888, again the same year as the spree. And Poplar, Rose's death was initially thought to be suspicious, but authorities ultimately ruled it as accidental or self-inflicted. Like what? The nature of her unaliving does not align with the gruesome mutilations attributed to the Ripper. So this would have been after his spree. Welcome in, Wendy. Welcome in, Love, Misha, everyone. Mish Mosh. Welcome, everyone. Sometimes y'all's names are so small, it's hard for me to read them, but welcome, welcome, welcome. So, again, this would have been really after Jack's spree, Rose Millet. So
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Yeah, I think that the Martha Tabram one we talked about previously, I would say would be much more along the lines of Jack's MO, his modus operandi, than Rose. But let's get into Alice Mackenzie. She was unalived on July 17th, 1889. So this would have been almost a year after the canonical 5. Alice's body was found on Castle Alley in Whitechapel with and again, abdominal mutilations. The style of her injuries, however, led many to believe that her unaliving was the work of a copycat rather than the Ripper himself. Again, this is really hard to state because back then, some people kind of start the serial persons movement with Jack. And so this type of crime had really never been studied, like scientifically. And I believe, Steve, if I'm right, like didn't Sherlock Holmes kind of put some of this information and kind of started our way into fingerprints and forensics and following evidence?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't know what made why they thought they got these main 5 victims, but then these other ones that are slightly like plotted all over the place aren't in the. Do you know what I mean? Like the main Ripper victims. So I wonder what made them think. Is it because of the period of time that they were unalived, or was it? You know what I mean? Because like some of them, like you said, like Martha Tabram was, she was pretty like brutalized, wasn't she? She was like quite.
Yeah, and she had the throat and this mutilation.
Yeah.
So I think she definitely fits more into the Ripper's MO.
Yeah. So I don't know why. I don't know why they were. Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, carry on.
So again, Frances Coles, she again was thought to be a copycat because this happened 2 years in 1891. However, her throat had been, but there were no other signs of damage to her body. Some believe she was a Ripper victim, but others think again it might have been a copycat. But it doesn't always have to be a copycat because, as we discussed, living in Whitechapel at this time was dangerous, and a lot of these women were ladies of the night, and so they would have been easy targets. We know that Jack was not the only person going around and committing crimes during this time. And next, we're going to get quickly into the Thames torso unaliver.
They also would have been drunk a lot of the time as well, wouldn't they? Even like just to add to the vulnerability.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's why I think that the Ripper sometimes would stand outside of some of the pubs that these women would frequent and maybe follow them out and see, kind of track their, what alleys did they hang out in? Was there enough light for him to do the work he wanted to do, but enough dark that he wouldn't be seen? You're not going to want to do this in front of somebody's doorstep if they're home. So, I do think
even a customer, isn't it? They reckon he could have been, because obviously a lot of them were seen with someone. Like I think Annie Chapman was seen with a man. I can't remember exactly. I don't know if it was where she lived. I don't know if it was on was it 26 Hanbury Street?
Mm-hmm.
And someone there is an inquest somewhere of someone talking about a description of who she was talking to, and the words "will you" was heard, and then that was the last time someone saw Annie Chapman. And then next thing she knows, she's in her in the backyard, isn't she? And yeah.
Yeah, is Annie Chapman the one where they found the leather apron over the fence or over the?
So there was a piece of rag found on. I think that was Catherine Eddowes, where I think it was dropped in. I think isn't it the only piece of evidence that was ever actually there still exists, but they couldn't get any DNA from it. I think that was in Galston.
And even if you can get DNA, who are you going to compare it to?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it was like tested like in the 90s or something, and they couldn't really do much about it. But I think it was found in Galston Street after not far from where Catherine Eddowes was killed, and then that was under the message, wasn't it?
Right, and maybe he took that as a trophy. We know that a lot of
or wanted it to be found near because that's always been, it was rubbed off, wasn't it? The sign of the wall was rubbed off.
Yes, I believe before they were able to take picture. I think that the police wrote it down, but they didn't want people to see it. So
they didn't want the Jewish community to see it because it would have just caused havoc in the Jewish community, wouldn't it? So,
yeah, because the message was very anti-Semitic. And so, was this even written by the Ripper? We don't know. Was this written by somebody who wanted to blame Jewish people for the crimes that were being committed because of the anti-Semitism?
I really don't know I don't know. I'm not sure it was him. I really don't know. This is why this is frustrating. This is like the hardest case in the world to like crack, in my opinion.
I know. Okay, well, let's quickly get into the Thames torso unaliver. So this was, people don't know if it's connected to Jack or not, but between 1887 and 1889, which would have been the timeline because Jack spree was in 1888, several dismembered female bodies were discovered in and around the Thames and Whitehall areas of London. There were sometimes attributed to Jack due to their extreme brutality. However, dismemberment style and lack of the throats distinguish these cases from the canonical five, leading some to think that they were the work of two separate unalivers, sometimes dubbed the Thames, am I saying that right? Thames torso killer. So, like I said, while some of these unaliving share elements with the canonical five, such as locations, victimology. Their details vary enough that most experts remain divided. The Whitechapel unalivings file compiled by London's Metropolitan Police includes 11 cases encompassing both the canonical 5 and non-canonical victims, though the exact connection remains speculative. But also we know, and I know Sasha knows quite a bit because she lives in the Northern California region, and we did the Santa Rosa unalivings together. And we kind of discussed the Zodiac in that. There's actually, sidebar, there's a new thing on Netflix called The Zodiac. This is the Zodiac speaking. Have you watched that yet, Sasha?
I have, yeah. So good.
I'm like, he is like, what's his name? I'm like, my
Mordecai?
Well, Mordecai was thought to maybe be Santa Rosa, but the Zodiac and the Santa Rosa unaliver were working in the same areas.
Yes.
But we know that the Zodiac changed up his, like first he used a pew, which in my belief, I think like that's much more of a crime where you're not face to face with somebody, like you can do that from a distance. Right. And then he escalates to using sharp force weapons, you know? So, and the only reason we know it's the Zodiac is because of the signatures and he wrote on one of the cars and sent information to the police that nobody would have known.
Exactly.
What was his name? Alan? Have you watched the Zodiac speaking? He's been like the top Zodiac suspect for a long time. But when you get into that documentary, I'm like, okay, that's
Richard Allen. Is that his name? No,
yes. Oh my gosh, I can hear you clicking away. You're looking it up.
That's the Delphi guy.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Oh
allegedly.
Yeah. Allegedly.
It was Allen something. Anyways.
Yeah, it is. I gotta look it up.
Gotta look it up.
It'll drive me bananas. Arthur Lee Allen.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, but like he was a diver, and so he would dive at Lake Berryessa, and so again he knows the areas where he's leaving, you know, some of his victims. But the police did actually, I believe, Allen was like their top suspect.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's get into suspects in the Jack the Ripper case. So numerous suspects have been proposed over the years as possibly being Jack, with theories ranging from plausible to highly speculative. These suspects include both doctors, local residents, foreigners, and even members of the British royal family, which you can see in the movie From Hell. If you guys have not watched that, it is a great movie, especially for Halloween. Morbius, James, Clark Stahl, Dudu, everyone welcome in. Thank you. We are doing Jack the Ripper today. So one of our first suspects is Montague John Druitt. Druitt was a barrister and school teacher whose body was found in the Thames in December 1888, shortly after the last canonical murder, which would have been Mary Jane Kelly. His passing was ruled a self-unaliving, and some theorize that he took his life out of guilt of fear of being discovered as Jack. Druitt's background and timeline align with the Ripper's unalivings, though there is little direct evidence linking him to the crime. However, we know with this spree of 5+ women being unalived in a very short period of time that, what did stop him? Did he go to prison? Did he go to a mental asylum? Did he self-unalive? Did he move to America, which is going to be a big theory?
Like H.H. Holmes theory?
Yes, I don't believe that he was H.H. Holmes. I'm like, their MOs are so drastically different. I've studied H.H. Holmes. Again, I'm like, now you guys, maybe next Halloween we'll do that one. But H.H. Holmes was an American serial unaliver, and he would lure women to his house of like mazes where he would unalive them in very different ways. Also, he was like a con man, scammer.
Jigsaw.
Yes. I really think that some of the Saw movies are based off of like H.H. Holmes, or
I
inspired by.
think
Hey, Colleen, how are you doing? Happy Halloween, my friend.
I'm reading a theory saying that they believe that he may have unalived himself.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that is a very plausible theory because, again, what stopped him? You know, did he think that, did he send the letters and think he was getting too close? In my mind, I do believe that he had some sort of mental disruptions or mental illness. To what degree? Obviously, I don't know. I can't diagnose somebody we don't even know the identity of. But the way that he treated his victims, victimology, and his modus operandi, he very much reminds me of who they call the vampire of Sacramento. His name was Richard Chase, and he unalived women, lots of people, in a very similar way. So I've kind of connected them psychologically, if that makes sense, you know, because he would pull out organs, and it was very, very brutal. And he was obsessed with, you know, the red fluids. And in my opinion, Jack the Ripper would have had to have some type of anatomical knowledge. At this time, we know there's a lot of medical students. There are people that are digging up graves to study because a lot of they didn't have a lot of resources to study the human body at that time. We're going to get into that because one of the organs was sent with one of the letters. However, medical students had access to a lot of these things. So was it a medical student? It could have also been a butcher who would have had anatomical knowledge.
I know that this Druid guy, I think that's the one that they believe, some people, if you're into the paranormal stuff, people say that they can see the ghost of the Ripper jumping into the Thames. So that must be him, because if he was the one that was meant to be, alive,
HT Warrior.
Shortly after after Mary Kelly.
Right, because that he was found in December of 1888, so it would have been less than a month since his last victim.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. Because of the letters, though, I don't think he was a guilty person.
Well, and like we said, I mean, there are people that are struggling with mental illness. They're living in poverty-stricken areas. I mean, even some of these tenements, I know you can see here that there's windows, but a lot of the ones that the women lived in didn't even have windows. I mean, it was just stifling, the pollution, the smog. I mean, can you imagine living in that time? I'm assuming that there was probably quite a lot of self-unalivings at this point. So let's get into Aaron Kosminski. He was a Polish-Jewish immigrant living in Whitechapel who was placed in a mental asylum shortly after the unalivings. He was known to have a strong distrust of women and suffered from severe paranoia and delusions. Here's the DNA in 2014. DNA evidence from a shawl, like Steve was saying, allegedly found at the Eddowes crime scene was linked to Kosminski, but the validity of the evidence is heavily debated due to contamination concerns and questionable, the way that they saved stuff back then. I mean, DNA wasn't even a twinkle in somebody's eye at this point. I mean, we were not even barely doing fingerprinting. Go ahead. Did you want to say something?
I'm just going to say, we know about things that get put in paper bags, don't we?
Right.
Of other cases.
Everybody in here knows that I do the Darley case. Seriously, they did no better than what they were doing in 1888, it seems.
Maybe they had the same police crew on.
They didn't have much more knowledge, it seemed, when they collected evidence from that crime scene. All right, let's get into our next suspect. His name was Michael Ostrog. He was Russian-born criminal and con artist with a history of violence and mental instabilities. His inclusion on police suspect list at the time makes him a notable suspect, though he lacks a clear link to the crime. Modern analysis often casts doubt of his involvement due to his probable absence from London during the unaliving. So, although he seems to be a good suspect, they could not place him in England at the time. So, All right, you guys are definitely going to know the next one. This is a very famous suspect, and his name is Dr. Francis. How do you say the last name? Tumbletti? Tumblety.
Yeah, I like this. Is the one that I think is a good one.
Okay, let me read the description and then I'll let you take over. So he was an American quack doctor. He was in London during the Ripper unalivings and was known for his misogynistic views. He was arrested for unrelated charges and fled back to the States shortly afterward, which some see as suspicious. However, no substantial evidence connects him directly to the unalivings, and his background as a scam artist makes him seem less plausible than a unaliver with surgical precision. However, like we just stated in the H.H. Holmes case, we know he was also a con artist. So I don't know why they think that a con artist can't also be an unaliver.
Yeah, I mean, from what I used to what I heard about him, that he was a doctor. He was also gay, I think, and so obviously some sort of hatred towards women. And I think he had things in jars, supposedly, for medical, I don't know, research or whatever. And I think he was right in the centre of the Whitechapel, where all the so it would have been a good place for him to work because he could have fled back to his place quickly. I think he lived on something called Batty Street, which was quite close to a lot of the victims. And I think that there's a guy on YouTube, if you want a really good source, called Jack the Ripper. He's very knowledgeable, like very deep dive on everything Jack the Ripper. I mean, he does a little segment on there called the Batty Street Lodger.
Yes.
About someone who giving a bloody shirt into a laundrette, or someone to wash his shirt. So I can't remember if it was the same guy or not. But yeah, he after the last known victim, I think he went to America, and then no one really is just finishes after that, which is a little bit annoying. But then you mentioned about these. What was it you said to look at?
So actually, Rich, which a lot of you guys know that I work with, he studied the bell tower unalivings, and they seem very close, not only with victimology, modus operandi, him being in the time and location, very likely that, and again, I'd have to go look it up, but some believe that the bell tower unaliver, which worked out of the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 19th century, early 20th century, could have been the same person as Jack.
Yeah, I want to read. I found the book of it online. So
I know. I have a pile of Victory. I need to find somebody that does a YouTube of it though, because I'm really interested. It's not one I've dug my teeth in quite yet too, but I really want to.
Honestly, I think the Jack the Ripper tour guy, he's so vast, his knowledge. I think he is a ripperologist, and I'm not sure if the guy does tours, and the Ripper tour in London, but he's got literally all pieces of old newspapers, all inquest testimony. If you're a Jack the Ripper fan, definitely check his stuff out. He goes really deep, very knowledgeable.
Sasha, when I was watching the Zodiac Speaks, I actually was watching it yesterday. I was like, how cool would it be to have the original newspaper clippings of the ciphers and stuff?
That would be really cool.
Oh, so cool. I'm I bet you could probably go find them at the library, microfiche or something, but it'd be cool to have one of the original newspapers.
Yeah.
If anybody out there that has one, I do collect stuff like
they're probably around up here.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm if you ever run into one somewhere, let me know.
Okay.
All right, let's get into this. Would be a royal family suspect. So this is called the royal conspiracy. So Sir William Gull was a prominent physician to the British royal family. The royal conspiracy theory postulates that the unalivings were part of a cover-up to silence women who knew of a secret marriage involving Prince Albert Victor, Queen Victoria's grandson. And this is the theory that they kind of run with in the movie From Hell. In this theory, Gull acted on behalf of the crown to eliminate threats to the monarchy. However, this theory is largely dismissed by experts as it lacks credible evidence and is considered more fiction than fact, which I have to agree with. I don't think like this was such a massive problem that unaliving 5 women wasn't going to fix like the Whitechapel area. So I don't know why they would have, you know, the crown would have been behind this, but you never know.
There is did you ever watch the 1980s? Because obviously there's about a million Jack the Ripper movies, isn't there? There's a really good one you can watch on YouTube, and it's with Michael Caine in it.
Oh, I do think I've seen that. It's been a very long time. Yes.
Yeah. It's where their theory in that movie is it is the Queen's position again, isn't it? William Gull, isn't it? With an apprentice person, and the reason they got stopped, they couldn't get stopped, was because they was in a carriage, but it had the royal crest on it, so they couldn't, and no one could legally stop the carriage with the royal crest. Therefore, it was easy to do the deed, get in the carriage, which would have been obviously probably like covered in blood or whatever, but it couldn't be stopped because it was royal family. So
it'd be like a police officer these days, like jumping in a police cruiser and being able to flee quickly without being noticed.
Yeah, because you wouldn't think to,
Huh.
I think it's like one of those like fun in theory conspiracies, but like I said, I think that this unaliver was probably mentally ill. The spree, the type of throat and mutilations in this area. I mean, I feel like if the crown was behind it, why would somebody go to such great lengths? So whoever did this got great pleasure out of doing this to these women, unfortunately. All right, let's go into our next one. James Maybrick. Maybrick was a Liverpool cotton merchant and suspected arsenic addict. That's strange. I think there's a lot better stuff out there than arsenic, whose wife was accused of poisoning him. In the 1990s, a diary surfaced allegedly written by Maybrick confessing to the Ripper unaliving.
There's a whole YouTube documentary on him with this diary, and it is weird. He is another one that I'm like, could this be a fake diary? Because it's too good.
Yeah, that's the one you were telling me about to go watch. What is it? It's on YouTube. It's called The Diary.
I think it's called The Diary of Jack the Ripper, and it's all about James Maybrick. And this diary they found in someone's attic in the 1990s. And I think it links to him.
So some say that, I mean, again, there are people on both sides. Some say that it is questionable, while many others believe that it is authentic. However, his connection to the crime seems, again, but back then they couldn't make these connections. Like these days you can follow everybody around on their cell phone, their social media. How do you know where these people were back then? Unless, welcome in, Leonard, unless, you know, they were coming through customs and were able to be, you know, traceable. I don't understand why they're like, oh, well, we can't put them in that area at the time. Well, you don't know where anybody was at that time.
No.
All right, this is another really good suspect. Welcome back, Crystal. And this is George Chapman, aka Swearwin Klozowski. So he was a Polish-born barber who later became a serial poisoner. After moving to London, he unalived several of his wives with poison, leading to his conviction and ultimate execution in 1903. Chapman was able to be placed in London during the canonical 5 unalivings and had the capability of violence. However, poisoning as an MO is quite different than the brutal methods used by the Ripper. However, like we state, these people can escalate and they can change MOs, especially when they have vulnerable victims at their dispense. So what do you guys think about George Chapman? I actually pulled him up on Schmurderpedia, and he has 3 victims between 1897 and 1902. It would have been Mary Sprink, Elizabeth Taylor, not the Elizabeth Taylor we all know, and Maud Marsh, which was his mistress. And like I stated, they were all poisoned.
I mean, he'd have to escalate pretty greatly to go from poisoning to what he was doing.
Well, like we were just stating with the Zodiac, it's like doing this kind of crime, like you're looking your victim in the face, like you are literally inside them doing things. Poison is a very indirect, you're not like getting into brutality and the violence and the anatomical knowledge that Jack the Ripper seemed to have, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think, no, he didn't jump out at me, this one, as a contender.
However, a lot of people, because he was Polish born and possibly Jewish, and there is that. Sorry, I've got to do my puzzle as if I haven't been moving around. Some people, again, just make these connections. But again, it's like, how many Jewish people were living in Whitechapel and in the London area at this time? Tons. So that's not, to me, a very good connection.
No, dominated by like Jewish immigrants at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, a lot of especially Polish immigrants coming over. But can you kind of explain to us how the anti-Semitism ties back into the Ripper case?
No, I just know that it was. I don't know. I don't know a lot about the actual.
I think it's just from some of the letters and some of the statements that were written.
Yeah, I think like the thing on the wall was obviously sounded like it was trying to maybe blame the Jews, which is why it was taken off the wall, so it wouldn't cause a problem. But I know a lot of there was a big vigilante committee at the time called the Mile End Vigilante Committee, and a lot of them I think were anti, like Semitic, trying to find people, and I think they accused someone, didn't they, called Leather Apron, who was a Jewish butcher.
Right. And he lived near one, I can't remember which one of the canonical victims, but he lived near one. And of course, every day when he came home from his job as a butcher, he would hang his apron over the fence and he would wash it down and let it dry. And so because that just happened to be in the same area as one of the canonical victims, one of Jack, before he sent the note in where he got his name, Jack the Ripper, a lot of people at this time are calling this man Leather Apron. However, this man has been excluded from being Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, he was excluded very quickly, but I suppose that I'm not actually sure what aroused their suspicion, other than the fact that he could get away with a bloody apron. So he could have easily have had, just no one would bat an eyelid.
And he was a butcher, so he would have had anatomical knowledge. But
I think that was it. I think it was the knowledge that they initially leapt on and just thought, oh well, he's covered in blood, so he could get away with it. So maybe it's him, sort of thing. But then I know he was discarded quite quick.
I think his wife and his family stated that he was inside of the house, and that didn't they even report that they heard like a yelp or like you said, somebody saying like, will you, or something like that.
Yeah, that was someone who saw, who knew Annie Chapman, she was talking to someone who had the appearance. That was it. It was the appearance of the sailor, is what was in the inquest. And so obviously it wasn't Hollywood Jack the Ripper with the tall hat,
right.
The big black
around in a cape like this, he would have stood out quite a bit.
Cool as that kind of looked like in film, obviously he would never have looked like that. He would have blended in. So yeah, I think apparently he had the appearance of a sailor. I don't think he was that tall, this particular person that was seen. And yeah, he was heard saying the words "will you" to her. So it could have been a customer, and then that was the last time someone saw of her, and the next time she was not in a good way.
Well, and like when they're, of course, London Metropolitan Police had put several patrolmen out on the streets at this time, some dressed as John, some dressed as drunks on the side of the street,
Yeah.
even some wearing wigs and pretending to be women to try and see if they could lure in Jack. And I can't remember which one of the canonical five, but they were doing 15-minute patrols. So like 15 minutes, nothing is there. They come back
That
to the
was
same
on.
area and there's a victim there.
Yeah, well, that's the one because that's the one with Catherine Eddowes. It was literally patrolled like minutes before, and
Right.
there was a dark corner in Mitre Square, like a sort of, I guess, a bit that wasn't really lit up, but it was literally searched. And then when he come back on his route and went round and come back, she's there, and she's absolutely, she was like the second worst, obviously second to Mary Kelly.
Right.
And
Yes.
in the real mess, he must have been. I don't understand how fast this guy was, but he was fast. When he was
Well,
fast,
that
he
was
knew
the
what he was
night of
doing.
the double event. So he
Yeah,
was caught and then like had the balls to go out and go for
yeah.
another victim.
He didn't get his kick, did he? But
Well, and this just shows how fast and how silent these crimes can happen when you look at the Darley Routier case. Um, Somebody being unalived by a sharp force weapon is very quiet, especially if there is a slashing of which happened in the Darley case. So if you guys are interested in that, you guys know I cover a lot of Darley as well as other true crime, but she's kind of my main focus.
if there's one case to get behind right now, it's that, because she's still alive and she's still like the opportunity to let's get her exonerated
Correct.
instead of.
We believe she was wrongfully convicted, and right now she sits here in Texas on unalived row. And so, like we said, if you're interested in this case, or if you thought that she was guilty, as a lot of us did to begin with, go back and watch some of my content if you're interested in the Darley Routier case. But let's get back to old Saucy Jock. So we have a couple of other a couple of other suspects. So Thomas Cutbrush was a medical student with severe mental health issues and a reputation for violent attacks on women. He was committed to an asylum in 1891. Some contemporary reports linked him to the Ripper due to his violent tendencies and presence at the time he was there, but there is no concrete evidence tying him to the murders. Quickly, I'll go over another one, Joseph Barnett. Barnett was a fish porter who we kind of talked about. There were sailors coming in and out of this area that did hire these ladies of the night. Barnett was a fish porter and a former lover of Mary Jane Kelly, which was
I heard of this guy, and if he was a sailor as well, that does kind of have some gives it some legs, doesn't it? And yeah, I heard
I
he
do
was
think
partner of
so.
Mary Kelly. Wasn't he there that night earlier on?
Yes. And I believe they had gotten into an argument that night. And
Yeah, they did.
apparently when Mary Kelly got a little sauced up, she was an immigrant from Ireland. She could get pretty sassy. And so but why then would he have unalived the first four victims if really he was, some say that he did this to like cover up the fact that he wanted to unalive Mary Kelly at the end. And of course, Mary Kelly was the most violent of them. But again, it's kind of like, why go through the trouble of unaliving four women before that?
Yeah.
So some people say that he unalived Mary Jane out of jealousy and then unalived the other women to discourage her from being a lady of the night. His familiarity with Kelly and her surrounding makes him a plausible suspect, though there's no direct evidence linking him to any of the other women. So like I said, Mary Kelly, unfortunately, she did have her own place. However, the window had been broken out of her tenement, and so you could just reach inside and unlock the door. So Joseph Barnett would have known that. But again,
That wasn't caused by them. That wasn't caused. I don't actually know how that was caused, I'll be honest with you. Was that caused from him? Was that an argument gone? And then, because in the film, that's how it happens. But I don't know in real life, that's how it's
I don't know in real life if he's the one that punched the window out so he could get access into her home. that's a little interesting. Now, if it was just Mary Kelly, I could see him being a plausible victim. But for him to be so violent, like I said, this person has got to have anatomical knowledge. I mean, he was a fish porter, so maybe he had like fish anatomy, but that's very different from even being a butcher, like with cows and pigs, have much more similar anatomy to the human anatomy.
Oh, you still would have to be efficient though, right? You still would have to be fairly swift with a blade.
Yeah. So other theorists suggest that the Ripper could have been an unknown sailor, a butcher, or even a midwife. There have been theories that Jack was a woman, although I do not believe this. The idea of Jack being a foreigner or lower class worker is largely based on the crime's brutal nature, although again, we lack substantial evidence. Despite extensive investigation and speculation, no suspect has been definitively identified as Jack. The case remains one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries, continuing to captivate researchers and the public alike. So before we get into letters, does anybody want to jump up? Do you guys have anything you want to say?
Only there is another victim. Sorry, not victim. Suspect I like, and that was in a documentary I saw not too long ago. And it was one I told you about, and it was like Charles Lechmere.
Yes.
And I believe possibly the Ripper was caught at the first victim, which was Mary Ann Nichols, because there was a guy who was on his way to work called Robert Paul, who made his way through Bucks Row, and on that morning he saw a bloke standing over the woman, and the other guy made out as if, oh yeah, I've just seen her too. So I think they both sort of decided what to do with her, and she wasn't bleeding out at this point. So it's almost like when you're, if I don't know when you wound your throat, not blood necessarily would instantly go from, especially if you was on your back. So
Right.
to me, that kind of makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily be bleeding at that point, or maybe
and
starting
especially
to.
like we know, going back to Darley, like it depends on how deep that slash is.
I mean, with her, she was almost. I mean, it always went back to the spine, didn't it? So it doesn't make sense that
not back to the spine. It almost went through her carotid.
Right.
The carotid is on this side. It brings blood up, and then the jugular is down this side and brings the blood back down through your brain. So hers was on the carotid side. But
Right.
if either vein, one's a vein, one's an artery, are
Which is the right side, right?
the right side is the carotid, the left side is the jugular.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, so a vein carries. Here's an anatomy lesson. Veins carry blood up, arteries carry them back down to
Okay.
the circulation of the heart. Yeah.
But I mean, if she was on her back, I mean, she would never have been. The throat would never have been slit standing up or anything. I don't think he definitely killed them beforehand. They quite
do you
often
think
say
that
they reckon
I mean, obviously, do you believe that the throat wound was done first, therefore they couldn't scream?
I think he was quite handsy and would unalive them quite quickly and silently.
Do you
And
think
then
he did it from the
time.
front, like facing them, or do you think he came up behind the back?
I don't know. I reckon sometimes it would have just been straight forward, face to face, posing as something, customer or whatever. Went for the strangle possibly, and then when they were incapacitated, he would get to work because then he could do what he wanted, couldn't he? Probably quite swiftly. But if she was on her back, the blood obviously wouldn't be necessarily going out at first, I guess. Maybe it'd be sitting more. If she was over facing forward, it would probably spill out more, right? But at any point, at this point, there was no pool of blood anyway by these two gentlemen's account, because they didn't quite know they didn't know if she was dead or drunk, and her skirt was slightly
some
up.
of these women were just assumed to be drunk on the side of the street, and people hadn't realized that they were actually, not alive.
Because where it was quite dark, I don't think they didn't really want to. They was going to go and get a police officer. I think that's what they went to do. And her skirt was slightly up, so they made her a bit decent. They pulled it down.
Yes.
And then they went on their way. And then when they went to go find another policeman actually found them himself. So Yeah, but I reckon that possibly could have been the Ripper, the first guy that was already at the body.
Well, and we
Um,
know that
and
people like
we know the
to.
guy's name. We know the
Well,
guy.
I was gonna.
He gave himself a fake name. He gave himself a fake name because his name was Charles Lechmere, but I think he gave the police officers the name that his name was Charles Cross.
Oh.
Yeah, so.
Well, we know that sometimes killers will stand around and watch, the scene or insert themselves into the investigation. And that's going to bring us into some of the letters. So you guys ready to get into some of the letters?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So during the investigation, the police and press received hundreds of letters from people claiming to be Jack. While most are dismissed as hoaxes, a few do stand out due to their content and timing. The Ripper letters remain intriguing, and we're going to talk about three in particular: the Dear Boss, the Saucy Jack, and the From Hell letters, often discussed as potentially genuine. All right, so first let's get into the Dear Boss letter. So this letter was sent on the September 25th and received by September 27th. Gosh, I feel like their mail went faster than mine does. The sender signed the letter as Jack the Ripper, which is where this killer gets his name, although we don't know his actual identity. This letter was the first to use the name, which would become infamous. So the content of the letter, it was written in a taunting tone. The letter mentions how the killer enjoys the unalivings and describes plans to cut off the next victim's ear. The writer taunts the police, expressing confidence that he will not be caught. The significance of this letter, after it was received, the name, of course, Jack the Ripper, spread widely in the press, solidifying the persona. Some believe this letter could be a hoax written by a journalist to boost newspaper sales. And as we were just talking about in the Zodiac, he basically did the same thing. Taunting the police, signing it with his own name, giving himself his own moniker. However, this letter would have been sent before any of the unalivings. This was sent in September, September 27th. And let's see, the first was October 31st, September 8th, September 30th. So it would have been in between Annie Chapman, the second victim, and Elizabeth Stride, the third. Would have been how the timeline is.
Have you got that letter in front of you?
I have a little excerpt. It says, quote, "I am down on WHORE, ladies of the night, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. I love my work and want to start again," which does imply that he did pick up just 2 days after this letter was received.
Yeah. I don't know. That letter is a bit. It could be either, couldn't it? It could be either or.
Right.
It could be someone starting and trying to get a name out there, like to sensationalize it. Because I know the is it the white? What was it? I can't remember the main paper that was around at the time that was putting out a lot of stuff like that.
Like the parchment type of. Here, I'm going to pull up the letter for you guys. Here's the envelope. Here, let me flip my cam. Oh man, I haven't been live in so long that they have moved settings around. Come on. Flip camera, there we go. Okay. Let me see if I can figure this out. It's because I have a green screen on. But it basically is, like Steve is saying, it's like a very parchment, discolored kind of red. And it says, "Dear Boss." And it was addressed to Central News Office in London City. And the letter reads, It's dated September 25th, 1888. Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't. This is hard to read. Won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right back. That joke about feather or leather apron gave me a real fit. I am down on ladies of the night, and I shan't quit ripping them. Do get buckled, greened. The last job, I gave the lady no time to squeal. So that kind of does show that maybe that's why
I do
they
think
did
it
that.
could be real. I think that one could be real because the letter that was sent to, is it George Lusk, the vigilante guy? He
Yeah, I think that's the from hell letter. We'll get into that one.
he's quite taunting in that, which is kind of like a behavioural similarity. So possibly
Yes.
that could be a real thing.
Well, and he knows about the leather apron that was hanging over the fence. And I don't know if that had been put in the press yet. I don't even know if police knew back then to like do hold back information, you know, that
It does make
instead of
sense as
putting
well.
everything in the press, you know, did they ever hold back any information on this case?
They did, yeah. That's why they got rid of the Jew thing, the Jew sign on the wall,
Right.
because they didn't want a public, they didn't want riots, because they were already in hot water, so they didn't want to like accelerate that. That's why he got rid of it. But obviously, that was also wiping off evidence.
Exactly.
But I think because it's a taunting tone, and also you got to think serial killers can, you know, some of them are very proud. You look at someone like Richard Ramirez, or you know, people like that are very like, oh, I'm part of a big group here. Like, I'm a name. So that also fits with me. The fact that he's trying to assert himself
Like
with
notoriety.
some sort of name, like notoriety, and then brands himself
naming
with that.
themselves is very,
So I don't know. I think you'd have to like. I'm sure they've done it. Like study the writing, see if there's any like similar words or spelling. Because I know he spelt Jews funny on the wall, didn't he? He didn't spell
and
it
just like we're talking
J-U.
about the zodiac letters, we knew he was smart and he misspelled things on purpose. Very common. So it says, I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved time of the proper red stuff in a ginger bar. So I think he's saying that he's using the blood to do things with. The last job to write with, but it went amok like glue. Oh, he's talking about the blood again. I write with it. So basically the letter is written in red and he's stating that he wrote it in blood, thick like glue, and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send them to you.
See, that's the bit that sort of if you really wanted to make that believable, then he would have done that, wouldn't he? And I don't think he did. So
yeah, no, an ear was never found, but I believe in one of these that we'll get in next one. We're going to get into the Saucy Jack postcard, but I think it's the From Hell letter that kidney was sent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the Saucy Jack postcard. So this one is dated October 1st, so it came in just days later in 1888. It was also signed Jack the Ripper. The postcard mentions the double event of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, which had occurred on September 30th. So this would have been 2 days later. It suggests that the writer committed both unalivings on the same night and mocks the police efforts to catch him. The significance, since it refers to the unaliving so soon after it happened, some believe it may have been written by Jack. However, I mean, none of this can be authenticated just because of the time. But that's, I like to call him Saucy Jack. I think that's like so funny. Let me see if I can pull it up. And whenever I'm gonna download this to YouTube, so I'll put some of these up when I do the shorts with it, so people can look at them. So let's read this one. So again, this one is written, this one, the handwriting is pretty similar, and it's written in red again. And it's sent to the Central News Office. And again, it looks like it has like red fluid on it. Don't know if it's, actual, but the handwriting, this one looks a little bit more erratic, but the handwriting does look very similar. Let's see if I can read this. I wasn't kidding. I wasn't something dear it when I gave, this is hard to read. And I work to something event. So he's talking about the double event. Again, he says the word squealer, which was used in the first letter, which is pretty interesting. I will finish it. Something off. I did not have time to get the ear to police. That kept lasting back till I got to work again. And it's again signed by Jack the Ripper. I don't know. That's pretty.
You say
The handwriting in the first one is like very kind of organized. This one, the handwriting seems very similar, but it's very disorganized, and the lines aren't straight. You know what I mean? So that's interesting. So one of the most, I think, iconic letters is the From Hell letter. So this one is received or was sent on October 15th, 1888, and received October 16th. This one, the letter was unsigned and is named after the opening line, which was from hell. The content of this letter is much darker and more disturbing than the previous two. It came with half of a preserved human kidney, which the writer claimed was taken from Catherine Eddowes, one of the victims. The letter states that the writer fried and ate the other half. Why would you want to eat a kidney? I'm like, that's like the worst organ to eat. Ugh.
Yeah.
Significance. Many believe this letter has the highest chance of being genuine due to its content and the accompanying kidney. However, medical experts have been unable to definitively confirm the kidney's origin. Of course, back then, we didn't even have blood typing. Anatomy and medical was in its early stages at this time. Medical students had access to a lot of these things. So it seems crazy, but it wouldn't be that hard to get a hold of a kidney, especially if you were a medical student and worked like back then in the medical office or with physicians at the time.
I think I did look into that was tested. I'm sure that was tested by a doctor, but obviously, like you said, it wasn't that great back then. But I'm pretty sure they determined that it was female, but they couldn't pin it on Catherine Eddowes. I think one might have said it was, and then someone else was like, no, it's not. But I think it did have. Is it Blight's disease or something?
Yes,
Maybe?
I believe so. Which would have just been like from.
Which I think she had.
It was a rare. Let me look that up. Now that you say that,
it's not 100% though.
So it can be found in the blood and urine. But really, it's just a historic name. It was probably like an autoimmune type thing, diseases that cause inflammation of the kidney. So it's basically like kidney inflammation. The nephrons are tubes. So that would probably be how they were able to identify that it had that she had brights. So the tubing inside the kidneys, which is like a massive filtration system, were swollen. So again, but at this time, a lot of people had this disease because it's a disease that can be caused by drinking, that can be caused from unsanitary conditions. Right, exactly. It was common. But I wonder if like they were able to take Eddowes' kidney and see if like the it made like a full kidney, like the
I
coat
don't know
marks.
why you wouldn't. Yeah, because if common sense would tell you to do that, wouldn't it? I'm not sure
Yeah.
if they went that far to it, um, which is a bit bizarre. I'll have to go and look into that one again because I just know it was tested. Um,
Yeah, we should. That'd be interesting. So, an excerpt from the From Hell letter, It says from Hell, Mr. Lusk, which was the primary sergeant at the time on the case. Sor is spelled SOR, not Sir. I
it
send
was
you half the
I think
kidney, and he left the Y off. I took from one woman. ... I fried and ate it.
George Lusk was the head of the vigilante committee.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't actually I don't think he was the old Bill. I think he was just a lead, like a
Like a
protest leader.
consultant or
Yeah,
something at the.
he was the part of the gang that was trying to track him down.
Okay, like the vigilante committee.
And then he was trying. I think they were getting all quite angry with the Jews and stuff. So yeah.
Do you think that he like would have hoaxed it to?
Maybe if there was something aimed at anyone particular in it, maybe like
Yeah, and there's not.
I mean, we know there is because there's loads of letters that you probably can't even find now, but we know from history that there was a lot of letters sent
Oh,
that
I
were.
mean, they said there were hundreds sent in
Yeah.
between September and December of 1888.
Be
There
interesting
are,
if any of them were actually authentic, that were just discarded.
yeah, it says apart from these three, the ones we just talked about, there are hundreds of other letters, but most are considered hoaxes. Two other examples that could possibly be more credible are one is called the Openshaw letter. So it was sent October 29th, 1888. Can you imagine sitting at your like police desk or station and having to open up all these terrible notes and hoaxes? Like this would have been not a fun job. So this one was addressed to Dr. Thomas Openshaw, which was a pathologist who examined the kidney from the From Hell letter. And this note specifically taunted the doctor, whose name was Dr. Thomas Openshaw. So that one possibly.
Openshaw.
Yeah, Openshaw. I think it is supposed to be saying, maybe it is, the Moab and Midian letter. So again, this one was sent in October of 1888. This one had a biblical reference, signed, quote, the Whitechapel unaliver, threatened more violence, but it's generally regarded as a forgery.
Why would you change your name?
Huh?
Why would you change your name?
Yeah, exactly. Not sign it Jack, but instead sign it as the Whitechapel. Yeah. So like it says, the three letters we talked about, Dear Boss, Saucy Jackie, and the From Hell letter with the accompanied kidney is often considered the most credible, but again, remains unproven. The mystery of these letters contributes to the dark allure of the case, with Jack the Ripper becoming a legend, as much due to these taunting messages and the unalivings themselves.
It's annoying, isn't it?
I know. So what do you guys think? Do you think this case will ever be solved?
Some people do believe that they've got it, and they like ripperologists.
Right.
Some people believe they narrowed it down. The ones that have gone through every piece of article and all the inquest statements of people and all that. I still think that I think Charles Lechmere was one of the best ones. I think because of where he was, and I also think that there's Liz Stride.
Yes.
When she was attacked, not long before she was murdered, she was actually seen to be attacked by two gentlemen, by a man walking down the street. One was watching out and the other was attacking. And the guy who was walking across the street obviously saw them. They saw that he saw them, and he shouted something at them, something like, "What you looking at, Lipsky?" Lipsky was like a slur. I can't remember exactly what it was for, but it was there was a reason behind it. But yeah, circumstantial type of wrong place, wrong time. Like that could have been him. That could maybe have been him.
Do you think that he did have somebody like watching for him though? Because
it makes sense in terms of how he wasn't caught. because
Yeah.
where it was all tight alleyways, narrow streets, at any corner someone could walk round. So it's very high risk for him to do it on his own.
Well,
I mean,
like
yeah,
just to be seeing these
it could be
pictures, there's
lucky.
some buildings that people would have lived high up and could have seen down into the alleyways. So,
Yeah,
like
local
you said,
people
he
would have.
had to have known this area.
Yeah, and how would people not have ever heard nothing? Like there is a few statements of people that lived by certain areas. Like I think in Mitre Square, someone heard someone like a faint cry from someone, but no
But
one
again,
like
you're living in a very poverty stricken, there's drunk people, there's
violence is common.
constant shouting, there's constant noise in the city.
Yeah. So you just would have gone back to sleep, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Possibly, I don't see why there couldn't have been someone else. Like maybe he was paid, or I don't know, some sort of accomplice. Yeah, it would have made
Yeah.
it easier for sure.
Well, and we do know, and like we've studied in some of our other cases, that sometimes these people find each other and commit together. I mean, we have Charles Lake and Ing. I can't think of their Charles Lake and Ing. They committed together. We've got the Southern California. There was two that used a van. We've also known that couples, especially in England, if you want to talk about a few like Fred and Rosemary and the was
Oh
it the
yeah,
Moreland? Yeah, so
oh yeah,
women would
Ian
lure
Brady,
women in to make them feel comfortable.
Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, wasn't it? Or something.
Henley, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, they were pretty brutal. I watched another one the other day that was quite good. It was Patrick Mackay in Britain. He was quite violent. He was a violent bloke. In
I don't know if I don't know if I've ever
he flew
studied
out. He
this.
flew out. I saw a documentary. It was on Amazon Prime, and I think he's
Okay.
due out soon. And he's been in for 40 years. But he was a absolutely nasty piece of work. Committed some quite heinous crimes. And I think because obviously we don't have the unaliving penalty, do we? So he's
Right.
he's done his time, and I think he's meant to be out. Obviously, he'll probably be under a different name.
Wow. It's really like, what do you think about the differences in the British, like how I mean, even to get life, in Britain, where here in America, like getting a life sentence or even getting sent to like unalived row is very common here.
Yeah, here is it's quite lenient. I think here,
Right.
like for it can be like there's certain crimes that you think why have they not got longer, and there's other things that you sort of think well, why would you sort of have to go in for that? Like I don't know. I mean we got rid of the capital punishment in like the last thing we had was in like the 1960s, and that was I think because we did something to someone and they was innocent.
But
I don't know.
executions, like in the,
I don't know.
19th, 18th century, like executioners were quite a well-paying job, to be an executioner, and they
And
would,
no one knew who did it either because you had a hood over you.
I know. I actually, I'll have to send it to you. I think I've talked to you about last podcast on the left, but they have a whole, they have a one episode that is just the, like the executioner. And like, if you, if you were, being executed, if you gave them like, even clothing or coins at the time, the executioner
Mm.
would do a better job, like a one
Yeah,
swing
yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah. Just
Where
so
if
you're
you didn't
aware,
have anything to give, the executioner might take his time. And again, nobody knew who the executioner was because they were
yeah.
hooded.
Just so you know, you've got 8 K. If you get you to 10K, I think you get pushed out a bit more. So
Well, I'm about done.
right.
Yeah, I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta go do a few things, and then we're taking Mikey trick or treating tonight.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Down in Texas,
down in Texas. Yep, we're gonna go trick or treating.
trick or treating down Eagle Drive.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, can you imagine trick or treating at that house? That would be strange. Although I'm sure the kids nowadays don't really know what happened there. I'm sure they do though.
No,
People still
they'll
talk.
probably get keep in the dark, don't they?
I don't know. I've like talked to several kids that lived in the neighborhood, like post the Darley Routier crime, and the kids all kind of like sneak around and say it's haunted. And of course, there's lore around, just the house itself, which the
Oh,
house,
really?
like, it does stand out a bit. It was like one of the only, at the time, one of the only custom made, and of course, it had the fountain in the front yard. But like I said, unless it wasn't a neighborhood you would travel into unless you lived in that town or, were visiting somebody in that neighborhood or had family there. So it wasn't
I
like
will
right
go
off
to it.
the main road. You had to, not only did you have to turn off of Dal Rock onto a primary street, but then Eagle would have been a secondary street. So it's not like it was right
Yeah,
on the,
I'm going to go at some point. Yeah. I mean, someone said, was it you told me that the person, if the psychic or the medium that went in there said it was a lie, and multiple people have said it's got like a presence in there or something like that.
and
I know it sounds a little bit, if you
yeah,
believe
the
in that kind of
lady
thing.
that I know that went in there, she said that, because a lot of people say they see the kids playing. Of course, it's like, probably very grandiose and just like lure. But she said that whoever came in that night brought something with them. It wasn't there previous to. And then that house goes up for sale quite a bit.
It does, yeah. I've seen it over the last few years, and it's like 2 or 3 years, and it's on the market again, isn't it?
Yeah, every 2 or 3 years it's on the market. So next time it goes up on the market, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go do a tour. I haven't. I've only been around the outside. I've never been inside of the home. But
You'd have to ask the estate agent.
yeah, yeah,
Even if you got to tip them like 500 quid or something, like you just say like, oh, you with like some people or whatever. That's what I
yeah.
would do. I would say,
I know.
look,
I'm like, let's just
we're true
get
crime
5
fans.
or
We're not
6
going to do
people to
anything.
throw in $100. Then there you go.
And there'll be nothing. They shouldn't say no to it because there'll be nothing in the house. It'll just be empty, won't it? So
Yeah,
like, look, we
yeah.
want it
That's
for
what
a
they did
night.
last time.
Yeah.
That some of my people that I work with, they went in when it was up for sale. So nothing was in it, like you said. But they did do some experiments, like when you're upstairs, because the house is very well insulated and was like a high quality build. If you're upstairs and you turn the air conditioner on, you can scream downstairs and not hear it.
Oh,
So
really?
people say, why didn't people hear her screaming? Well, not only did was the husband Darren, he was asleep upstairs with the air conditioner running, but I think they had a fan or something also in that room because the baby was sleeping in there. So with all that,
Didn't he also have a doobie? Then was he also have like a little bit of
right, exactly, yeah. Most
with
of the time,
mellowed
you
him
you
out?
want to keep air flowing around a newborn baby to prevent them not having adequate oxygen. So I believe they did have a fan next to the crib, and he was asleep upstairs, and the fan was on, the air conditioner was on, and it's kind of the Roman room sits here where the master bedroom sits here. So
Yeah,
there's a story, and that house is like, what do you think,
I don't.
4,000 square
That
feet?
doesn't. I find that is very plausible to me. Like I don't. That you wouldn't have been able to hear nothing through that. You would not necessarily be able to hear anything.
Yeah. I was saying, what size do you think that the Routier house is? Like square footage, like 3,500? Yeah, we haven't been inside.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
probably something like that though, because I mean, it's a pretty big house, and it's got a formal dining room, a formal living room, a
It's
family
got
room, a
the
kitchen, a downstairs bathroom, the stairwell.
and it's still got the
Um,
original drapes. Apparently, it was original. Well, that was the last I saw it on when it was advertised online. It said it come with the original drapes.
which I believe that those were
Perfect.
done, like those are Armani drapes that were
Oh,
custom
really?
done for the house.
Oh! I thought they were the ones that they bought. I thought they bought some.
Well, Darley did buy them, but I believe that she ordered them from like I think there are like they were done by Armani for the house
Oh, wow! Fucking hell.
because she had like Armani statues and stuff
Hmm.
in the entryway.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it does like seem plausible that the motive would have been a robbery. Like they had very nice things in that house. You know,
Well,
Darren
it's
drove a
like,
Jaguar, which
she
just
was good
happened to
looking.
not be there that day because it was in the shop. And so normally they parked. Darley had like an SUV type, like Ford Explorer or something. Typically, it was parked
Pathfinder,
in the
wasn't it?
front
Green
of the
Pathfinder.
house, and that night it was parked around the back.
Mm. Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
said, the Jaguar wasn't there; it was in the
It's
shop.
more
So
it's more than plausible that that was the case, and like and then the motive obviously changed. Wrong wrong people. You know what I mean? Like the wrong people went in there. They weren't just robbers. And
right,
you don't
right.
just
Which
do
you
that for the
know
first shot.
that a lot of times, like when we're talking about Richard Ramirez or Zodiac or Golden State GSK and stuff, it's like, you know, they start by like peeping Tom, then they start by robbery, which is
Yeah, you
like,
get more
if you
braver.
think about it psychologically, it's like invading somebody's space more and more. Like we said, some
Mm.
people will start out with pew pews and then move on to more personal escalations, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's that gang you said about, wasn't there, as well? There was like wasn't there a gang at the time that was quite famous for using sock or something, putting over the handles.
Yes. Yeah, one guy, like he had been a retired, I think it came out several years after the original trial, but he had retired and he was teaching people in the Dallas area how to rob houses and they were putting socks over their hands. So
Mm.
I believe that there is an original Unsolved Mysteries. If you haven't gone and watched that, I would highly
I thought,
recommend that
yeah,
because they do talk
yeah,
about
I've got
that
them.
in the yeah, there's an original Unsolved Mysteries on Darley, which I didn't even know till a couple of months ago. And Danelle was
No, I didn't
like,
know that.
"Yeah, there's an
I've got them on Netflix at the moment, but I don't think that's on there, unless it's like a really old.
I'm trying to think of where I watch. Well, we have like a channel here. It's on YouTube though. You can just YouTube Unsolved Mysteries Darley Routier. It's
Oh,
on
okay.
YouTube. The whole episode's on YouTube.
Mm.
Yeah, I would go watch that. It's pretty interesting because they do talk about that theory. Because I believe the episode was done obviously several years after the crime, and so more information had come out, and that's one of the theories they talk about in the Unsolved Mysteries episode.
Yeah.
So, well, very interesting. Thank you guys all for being here. Thank you for the spooky ghosts and stuff. You guys know I love to turn around and re-gift everyone back. And I'm so glad that you were able to come and jump in a box. It's awesome that you took time out of your day, out of your Halloween, and you provided some excellent information on the Jack the Ripper case.
Yeah,
So
it's
I'm
been fun.
very happy
Yeah.
with how this went. Yeah. So it's
Yeah, it's good to
fun.
learn to jump in.
Yeah, and make sure you go pick up like Sasha, who is in the box below you. She's one of my best fans. She is such an amazing
I
woman.
will.
She knows a lot about
I'll go and
crime.
follow
So
her.
yeah, I'll send you her profile. Make sure you go follow her. And there's a couple of other people that jumped in and out that I'll send you that are good friends that really enjoy the true crime aspect
And
of
then,
this.
yeah, we should do it. We'll do another one at some point. Maybe.
Mhm.
I mean, I'd love to do one with Danelle. Get her on and
Yeah.
do a Darley one. That would be pretty cool.
Well, and I'll have to talk to Rich, but next time he wants to do a YouTube, he said he'd be happy to have you on. He wants a new perspective.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll keep you guys updated if we do anything on Darley or if Danelle has time this week. I know with Halloween and everything, people kind of have a lot going on, but next time she's available, I will get her on live and we will do a Darley and we could open up boxes just like we did today. That would be so much fun.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Not fun, but interesting.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a very hard case, and obviously we
Mm.
have to remember that 2 young children were unalived, and
Yeah.
that's you know, and their mother is still
And it's still not that old, really, when you think about it.
not when
So
we're talking about Jack the Ripper.
no, it's like it's quite you when you think about that case, it's still quite a modern case, really, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
30 odd
because it
years
kind of
old.
separates like the 60, 70, 80 kind of rise of the serial person, you know, by the 90s, like with technology and changes in environment and, you know, transportation. You know, a lot of these people in the 60s and 70s were picking up like women that were hitchhiking. Again, a very vulnerable group of people that is easy to kind of pick off. And so people were no longer hitchhiking. You know, younger people were able to get vehicles. And so as time and technology changes, so does, you know, crime. It changes along with it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it still feels unresolved. Darley's one, doesn't it? It feels like it just got stopped and then went in and.
Well, the IP has it now, so let's wish Darley all the luck. She is a case that you can still be active on. And if you guys want to go look, I've got plenty of content on my TikTok and also on my YouTube, which is under the same name, Kitchen Table Research. So unless you have anything else you want to say, Steve, I think I'm going to jump off.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, cheers for letting me jump on.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I know that there's a time difference and I'm glad you're able to make it. And again, thank you. And thank you to all of my people that came in and out. I truly enjoyed this. This was so much fun for me to do. So we'll have to do it again.
Cool. Nice one.
All right. Bye, everyone. I will see you later.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. End.